everyone, Novels Wonderland here. Thank you all for the love and support you've shown me and the channel.
ReZero, the MC who only loves demi-human girls, Chapter 141 to 145. The Forgotten Existence, I'll Be Forgotten. Fiona and Maylie Portrout found a nearby inn. Fiona had originally wanted to just build a house, but after Maylie Portrout complained that it looked like a box, she gave up on the idea. Yes, it's probably a passively added divine protection. In any case, if Maylie Portrout gets too far away from me, she will forget my existence and won't be able to find me again, unless I actively make contact with you. Fiona sat by the nearby window, unconcerned. The situation in the Wallachia Empire was quite complex, which gave Fiona an opportunity to exploit. Doesn't that make it perfect for assassination? Maylie Portrout hugged the Lehun that Fiona had given her, unable to put it down. It also served as a reminder, if Maylie Portrout ever got lost, she could just have the Lehun bring her back. Do I need to assassinate anyone? That's certainly unnecessary. Maylie Portrout needed to rest after walking with Fiona for so long, and since Natsuki Subaru was likely still outside the city, it was better to wait inside the city than to stay in the camp. In any case, according to the progression of the plot, Natsuki Subaru would eventually come here. If we're talking about opponents, it should be Arakia, the second of the 9 divine generals. It doesn't seem like she has any abilities involving authority. Currently, Fiona could not be noticed by anyone else at all, and could only rely on Maylie Portrout to expand her influence. While Fiona was talking to herself, Maylie Portrout had already fallen asleep. Ever since the journey across the dunes, the child hadn't really rested, and after completely conquering the tower, she had followed Fiona all the way here. Priscilla and Al should be here too, right? It shouldn't be too much of a problem. The originally quiet city began to liven up. A sudden dance troupe dispelled some of the gloom brought by the Maybiasts. Ah, is it morning? Maylie Portrout said, dazed, looking at the sun in the west. It's dusk. What's happening on the street? Maylie Portrout hugged the Lehun and came to Fiona's side. A merchant group arrived from outside. Honestly, the guards here are being way too slothful. To have a large group of people of unknown origin appear during such a special time, even if most of them are women, they shouldn't be so careless. Fiona rolled her eyes. She really couldn't understand why Natsuki Subaru could speedrun a city in one go. Was conquering a city really less difficult than dealing with the Master of Decapitation? What do you mean? Just as the two were talking, the dance troupe that Natsuki Subaru and his group were impersonating had already arrived on the street. To minimize casualties as much as possible, Natsuki Subaru had suggested that everyone disguise themselves as a dance troupe to carry out a decapitation strike. The leader of this city was Dicker, known for his lustful nature. His greatest reputation in the outside world was his love for beautiful women. And that was indeed the case. Under Natsuki Subaru's maneuvering, the city's high-ranking officials had been completely infatuated by Natsuki Subaru and Flop, who were cross-dressing as women. Next was the close contact between the dance troupe and the high-ranking officials. As long as Natsuki Subaru succeeded, this city would be completely conquered by him. Are you saying Natsuki Subaru is in there? As if she had heard some particularly interesting news, Maylie Portrait's desire to watch the drama ignited. She even forgot that they were on the second floor, and leaned her whole body out of the window. Fortunately, with the Lehun helping to support her, Maylie Portrout was able to remain safe. However, perhaps Natsuki Subaru's makeup skills had improved, because Maylie Portrout didn't recognize him for a moment. That's really interesting. A hero who has conquered so many archbishops of sin is actually cross-dressing, haha. Maylie Portrout laughed without reservation. After Elsa died, Maylie Portrout had been placed under house arrest by Natsuki Subaru and the others in the Roswell mansion. Although Maylie Portrout was not to be underestimated, she was still just a child. It was rare for her to have a chance to come out and play, so she was naturally very happy. Otherwise, following Natsuki Subaru would basically be a life-or-death activity. This isn't Lugnica, so doing this isn't a big problem. Fiona replied matter-of-factly, in that case, what are we going to do? Are you still going to work for the witch cult? Meili Portrout didn't care what she did. At the very least, she felt that things were pretty good right now. Following Fiona and killing felt like returning to the days she spent with Elsa. That's not necessary, but it's about the same. In any case, it won't be a good thing for Wallachia. What? Are we going to conquer this empire? But the blue lightning here isn't weak, right? At the very least, isn't it an existence that can stand shoulder to shoulder with Reinhard? Having traveled far and wide with Elsa, Meili Portrout had naturally heard intelligence about the Wallachia Empire, especially regarding the Empire's top combatants. As long as there aren't any outrageous abilities, it won't be a problem. Meili Portrout looked at Fiona's face, and couldn't see a hint of joking, and only then did she realize that Fiona was serious. Like right now? Are we going to cause a scene like before and make those big guys fly? Meili Portrout was almost pressing her entire body onto the Li Hun. Unable to support her any longer, the Li Hun could only call out to Fiona for help. Alright, there's no need. Natsuki Subaru will conquer this city soon enough, it doesn't matter who occupies it. For now, let's not do anything too outrageous. Fiona pulled Meili Portrout back into the room. The Empire's forces will arrive soon. We just need to make sure we don't get targeted before Natsuki Subaru and his group do. By the way, there are quite a lot of demi-humans in Wallachia, aren't there? The location where the dance troupe was stationed was not far from the inn where Fiona and Meili Portrout were staying, so Fiona could easily observe Natsuki Subaru and the others. Furthermore, since Fiona had this layer of divine protection, ordinary people could not detect her existence at all. Therefore, as long as they were acting together, she only needed to keep Meili Portrout hidden. Meili Portrout naturally had no problem with this. As one of the assassins who had operated alongside Elsa, she was fully capable of basic camouflage. There are so many Imperial soldiers. Can they really succeed? Meili Portrout asked, watching Natsuki Subaru, who was being harassed by Jamal. It shouldn't be a big problem. With Rem, their combat capability is superior. Excluding high-level combatants, I really can't think of anything that could stop them. It's just unclear why they were let in. Fiona held the Book of the Dead and tried to check the situation nearby. Souls don't lie, the one wrapped in black aura was definitely Natsuki Subaru. It's really ridiculous. He's clearly a hero of Lugnica, yet he's in such a sorry state now. Natsuki Subaru shouldn't even need to worry about these things, right? Meili Portrout couldn't figure out why Natsuki Subaru was doing all of this. Logically speaking, what did the lives of the people here have to do with him? Chapter 142, Let the Cries Resound Throughout the World. Everything was proceeding according to plan, though the previous beast attack seemed to have accelerated the plot quite a bit. Oh my, little girl, are you lost? The princess and I have very important things to do. The one-armed man wearing a helmet, and the red-haired woman holding a folding fan were blocked by the young girl before them. As expected, the man was Al, and the woman was Priscilla. That's right, I'm here to block you. Meili Portrout blocked their path without a hint of fear, even though there were no beasts by her side at the moment. Is that so? Do you know who we are? Al's voice grew grim. Priscilla and Al, then, for what purpose do you seek me out? Priscilla, standing behind Al, spoke up. At the same time, Al paused, his movements immediately becoming much more relaxed. I have a question I'd like to ask the two of you. If it concerns me, such a waste of time. How do the two of you view Fiona Argyle? Meili Portrout spoke first. This question caught the two before her off guard. They hadn't expected to hear news about a Lugnica knight here in Wallachia. The Thousand-Sword Princess Fiona Argyle. A knight of Lugnica, a member under Crush, a genius in swordsmanship, and in that regard, nearly on par with Reinhard. Is that all? It seemed Meili Portrout was not satisfied with the answer Al gave. That's all there is to it. She isn't here, she's in Lugnica. Although I'm not sure how you know our identities, please stop blocking our path. After a moment of thought, Meili Portrout decisively stepped aside. Her task of stalling for time was complete, and what came next was. So, the world has been altered. Is it developing according to a scenario where Fiona never encountered the mansion attack? Or is it developing according to a scenario where Fiona defeated it? Fiona spoke slowly after the two had walked away. Although Priscilla was arrogant, she wouldn't go so far as to attack Meili Portrout, especially since Meili Portrout had Fiona backing her. Meili Portrout sat to the side, bored out of her mind, tormenting a familiar in her hands. According to what they said, there should be two Fionas now. Fiona instantly guessed the culprit behind the use of her identity. The Witch of Pride, who had originally been inside her, had likely been extracted by Pandora. How truly unpleasant. Fiona casually shattered the ground nearby, leaving Meili Portrout to shrink back in fear, not daring to make a sound. This was clearly Pandora's trap. If Fiona went back, she would likely be caught like a turtle in a jar. If that's the case, then let's throw everyone into chaos. If it were just a matter of fighting Pandora, Fiona wouldn't be worried, but she couldn't guarantee she could win. Since both were admins, it was understandable that they couldn't do much to each other. Therefore, Fiona planned to get everyone involved. The more variables there were, the easier it would be to break the situation she was being controlled in. How should we do that? Meili Portrout asked, wondering if they would just cry and make a scene in the streets like children, but Fiona actually affirmed this idea. Then let the cries resound throughout the world. Outside the city-state, the riots inside the city were about to begin, but Fiona's main objective was no longer here. A massive phantom flickered beside Fiona. After the final Wither skeleton skull was placed, the world seemed to grow a few shades gloomier. After all, it's not something from the original world. I was worried it wouldn't work at first, but to think I actually managed to pull it off by pure luck. As Fiona completed her final movement, the phantom began to fly toward the sky, accompanied by an unsettling sound. The Wither storm was gestating. Strictly speaking, this was not the Wither storm everyone knew. It had also incorporated some abilities from the White Whale and the Ghast. For instance, a mist that could make people vanish, massive range wither damage, and burning damage, among others. And the main body of the Wither storm was not this phantom currently forming, but Fiona herself. By the time Fiona returned to the city-state, Natsuki Subaru's plan had already begun, and the group dressed in women's clothing had arrived at the high-ranking officer's tent. Meili Portrout. Fiona pushed open the door to the inn. Before the two had separated, Fiona had left a note for Meili Portrout telling her to wait there for someone. However, the sudden appearance of Fiona startled Meili Portrout. Fortunately, with the familiar there, Meili Portrout wouldn't feel too bored waiting. Let's go. There's still a show to watch. Fiona beckoned for Meili Portrout to leave, but a dark cloud on the horizon caught Meili Portrout's attention. Having recovered her memories regarding Fiona, Meili Portrout certainly knew what Fiona had just gone to do. What is that? A bigger show. Birds in the distance were startled into flight, and the wind surged toward the city-state like a tide. Fortunately, Fiona had not placed the Wither storm too close to hear. Otherwise, the riots would have spread throughout the entire city-state. Now let's go and witness the strength of the second of the Empire's 9 divine generals. According to Fiona's plan, the Wither storm was definitely not something any single country could handle. In the end, it would require a combination of top-tier combat power to deal with it. Or perhaps a forced sealing via the rules. By the time the two arrived near the banquet, the commotion had already begun. It seemed Natsuki Subaru's luck was decent. He hadn't died accidentally, or perhaps Natsuki Subaru simply had a talent for this sort of thing. In any case, if Todd hadn't helped Natsuki Subaru out, he probably would have been pinned down by someone right from the start. After Natsuki Subaru and the others briefly subdued the city-state's highest leadership, Arakia appeared in the hall. Relying solely on a tree branch, she sent Natsuki Subaru's side reeling, to the point where they even considered retreating. Fortunately, Al and Priscilla arrived in time to save the day. With Al's help, the situation quickly stabilized, and it turned out Arakia and Priscilla had a past acquaintance. This resulted in Arakia going easier on Priscilla, and Natsuki Subaru's side, knowing Arakia's weakness, quickly overcame the formidable enemy before them. Whoosh rumble. The city was in chaos, and the storm outside the city grew increasingly fierce, with black clouds beginning to spread across the sky. A massive figure was floating in the sky at the heart of the storm. Why do I have such a bad feeling? Natsuki Subaru, having just secured victory, felt an inexplicable sense of foreboding. At this moment, everyone was still cleaning up the battlefield, and had no energy to pay attention to the outside world. Chapter 143, Sword Princess Under the Moon, a genius who joined the former Sword Saint to subjugate the White Whale before the age of 10, she rose to fame after staying behind alone to cover the team's retreat and surviving. Afterward, she became a Knight of Lugnica, and her performance in swordsmanship was fully on par with Reinhard, even causing brief controversy over the position of Sword Saint. Her status truly reached its peak on her 19th birthday, when her family was attacked by 3 witch cult archbishops. Not only did she not choose to retreat, but she took the initiative to engage them. After a fierce battle, she successfully repelled the witch cult on her own, and waited for Reinhard's support. After she launched her counterattack, no one else was killed or injured because of the raid. Thus the reputation of the Thousand Sword Princess spread throughout Lugnica, and she even became one of the pillars of Lugnica's combat strength. Lady Fiona. The royal capital is holding an emergency meeting. Come with me. Crush called out to the knight before her, and the flaxen-haired woman came back to her senses. Understood. Then who am I? Fiona followed behind Crush. The Argyle family was also incorporated into Crush's faction because Fiona was not good at managing the family. Felix did not have much attachment to the Argyle family, the only thing he cared about was Fiona. How cunning, Meow, you actually snuck out to play, Meow. Felix seemed to have been waiting on the side for a long time. Crush apparently hadn't told Felix about this trip. I thought you were resting. Crush was slightly surprised by the Catboy's appearance. Recently, the number of wounded in Lugnica had surged, including some knights from noble families, and the other party had offered a high price to request treatment from Lugnica's best physician, Felix. Felix had not refused. As a subordinate of Crush, he naturally took on this important task. Up until now, Felix hadn't had a proper rest for 2 days. Wanisama could fight for a day and a night straight, during the Watergate City invasion incident, so what does this amount to? Don't push yourself. I'm not, Meow. Since my 2 most important ladies are traveling, it is naturally my duty, as a knight, to escort the ladies. An inferior replica. Fiona number 2. Yes, she possessed all the memories of the Fiona of this world, but she was also very clear that she was just a replica, a doll created based on the sole foundation of the Witch of Pride. Then where is the real one? Felix performed a knight's salute and ushered the 2 into the dragon carriage. Even though Felix had the lowest combat power here, no one doubted his determination and words because of that. So what do you 2 think this meeting is about? Crush did not dwell on the small interlude. Kindness and tolerance toward one's subordinates are also part of becoming a wise ruler. The Watergate City attack just ended, Meow. Emilia-chan and the others headed to the sand dunes. Is it because of the royal selection? After all, it involved a journey concerning 2 royal selection candidates, and now there was no news at all, which was clearly unreasonable. As a royal selection candidate, Crush's information in Lugnica was already very comprehensive. Whether it was character, ability, background, or the combat strength of her subordinates, she was second to none. Maybe someone is going to give up on the royal selection, Meow. Felix guessed boldly. Even Reinhard had failed at the Sage's Tower, so it would be reasonable if Emilia, and the others failed too, then, the cost of failure would be unknown. That is indeed one of the possibilities. Crush nodded, confirming Felix's guess. So, Lady Fiona, what is your take on this? In the distant sky, a patch of black appeared, looming faintly like a drop of ink in a clear pool. Recently, the kingdom had been full of activity, and armies had even begun to assemble nearby. Even Reinhard, as the Sword Saint, had been dispatched, which was truly unreasonable. What a heavy topic, meow. Felix adjusted Fiona's hair, and an inexplicable emotion spread over the night. Fiona. Yes, you cannot deny her existence. She is right here. She also has everything Fiona experienced, and she also has her own feelings. The same bonds of family affection also appeared in her, but she was very clear that she was just a substitute, so her ending was also fixed. Is that the line of thinking? If you consider it that way, it makes sense, but any more speculation now is just idle talk. I hope Natsuki Subaru does not disappoint me. Becoming king, just like that would be truly boring to me. During the chat, the three had arrived beneath the royal castle. After entering the heavily guarded gates, the three stepped down from the dragon carriage. It seemed that the participants had almost all arrived. Outside the venue, it was quiet. Meow. Felix looked around the hall, surprised. Before him stood only one royal selection candidate, Felt. With Crush's entry, 2 out of the 5 royal selection candidates had arrived. It seems everyone has arrived. Wait a moment, where are the others? Crush interrupted the sages' council. The only royal selection candidates we can contact right now are you two. The situation is urgent, so please forgive us. Emilia and Anastasia were still on their way back, and Priscilla's whereabouts were unknown, so only Crush and Felt remained in the venue. Is that so? Then let's continue. After Crush indicated she had no objections, the meeting proceeded as usual. Because an abnormal disaster had appeared on the country's borders, the land eroded by black mist had become a dead zone, where not a blade of grass grew, and there were even rumors that a giant demon beast was hiding in the sky. The white whale? Crush asked in surprise. It is unknown, but we are not the only ones with a headache. The Wallachia Empire and other countries have all suffered varying degrees of damage. Thanks to Reinhard, Lugnica is currently in no great danger. Then what do we need to do? Subjugate it. Just as Fiona said, this was a war, thinly veiled under the guise of subjugation. Lugnica was not weak now. Although Reinhard could not leave Lugnica, Fiona could, and the former Sword Saint and the Sword Demon Wilhelm were also alive. The Felt faction will serve as the foundation for protecting the kingdom, while you, Crush, and your group can act according to the situation. The Sages' Council had made it very clear. Indeed, if the Crush faction could take this on, they could recover from the disadvantage at the Watergate City. Back then, Fiona had faced the Greedson Archbishop, so Fiona did not have any shining combat achievements, and in the end, it was Natsuki Subaru who dealt with Regulus. Chapter 144, Gentlemen, I desire war. If it were just an ordinary disaster, a single nation could certainly handle it. However, the current situation clearly appears unusual. A while ago, envoys from other countries already expressed their desire for an alliance. The Council of Sages recounted the current situation. Just as they stated, it was inevitable that Felt's camp would take on the defensive role, as the treaties between nations meant that Reinhard could not leave Lugnica's territory. It looks like there's absolutely no room to refuse, meow. Such a high-risk mission. Felix said with some dissatisfaction. Compared to defense, the difficulty of going to a foreign land to conduct a subjugation is unimaginable, not to mention the need to worry about the factional struggles between the various countries. Yes, but the other royal selection candidates have all achieved results in previous events. Now is indeed a good opportunity for us to overtake them. Crush and Felix's opinions were at odds, and both held to their own views. The people in the hall waited quietly for Crush's camp to discuss and reach a decision. It's not really a matter of how we consider it, meow. Besides, in terms of combat power, Felix had many concerns, one of which was the issue of combat power, even with Fiona's addition to the Crush camp. However, compared to other camps, it still didn't measure up. For instance, the Felt camp, aside from Reinhard, she had an entire, intact Sword Saint family backing her. And the Amelia camp appeared quite formidable to the outside world as well. With the already exceptionally powerful Margrave, plus Natsuki Subaru, who had swept away more than half of the witch cult, and that wasn't even counting other combatants. If the Crush camp's combat power were to suffer any losses at a time like this, it would only make an already grim situation even worse. I should mention here that you also have the right to refuse, because this subjugation is not mandatory. Lugnika's losses can almost be considered a drop in the bucket compared to other kingdoms, so waiting to see how things develop is also a good option. What would she do? What would Fiona do? With Felix and Crush holding opposing views before her, and the people in the meeting discussing matters in hushed tones, Knight Fiona was unsure of what she could accomplish. In her memories, she could always handle various difficulties that seemed impossible to deal with. I am not heard. What would I? I might not be able to change anything, but as long as I still hold my sword, as long as I can still strike, I will ensure that everyone behind me can live with the utmost fairness. Suddenly, a long-forgotten memory surfaced before Knight Fiona. Fairness. The fairness of life. Gentlemen. Let us fight. Ah, meow, we're doomed. The moment Felix heard Fiona speak, he knew things had gone south. In this situation, Fiona's opinion would most likely align with Crush's. Of course, Felix had his own personal concerns regarding this expedition. One was his sister, the other his childhood friend. There were too many variables on the battlefield, and Felix did not want either of them to get hurt. Those who seek to take our lives may have their own lives taken by us. This is the fairness I uphold. A very nostalgic declaration. Crush expressed her approval of Fiona's opinion. Both had strong-willed personalities, and would almost never choose to back down in the face of difficulty. Then, we shall accept this mission. Crush responded to the Council of Sages immediately. Karsten Mansion, the family knights responding to Crush's call, were quickly assembled, including a portion of knights from the Argyle family. Because of the unique nature of this mission, all of the Crush camp's key combatants were mobilized. The last time we mobilized like this was during the subjugation of the white whale, meow. Felix said with little enthusiasm. However, since it was Crush and Fiona's decision, Felix wouldn't say anything more, and would simply follow behind them. Since we are heading to the Wallachia Empire, we will most likely encounter their top combatants. Before that, it is necessary to refine our information. Crush brought out some documents inside the dragon carriage. With Reinhard stationed at the border, Lugnika's safety was not a major concern, and everyone could make some minor adjustments before reaching the border. 9 Divine Generals. The Azure Lightning. Fiona flipped through the documents in her hand. Cecilus, who was as famous as Reinhard, was also an extremely outstanding swordsman. Analyzing based on combat power, only the top few of the 9 Divine Generals are cause for concern. Of course, it is unclear if other factions will send combatants as well. Crush analyzed the situation for everyone. If top combatants from other countries arrive, it will be extremely disadvantageous for us. Crush implicitly placed Fiona in the second tier of top combat power, second only to Reinhard. Dealing with even one top-tier combatant was already difficult enough. If another party's top combatant also applied pressure, and Crush could not buy time for Fiona, it would be devastating for the Lugnica Expeditionary Force. Wanichon, what's your take on the first of the 9 Divine Generals? Felix asked Fiona with some curiosity. Everyone was very clear about Reinhard's strength. If that Azure Lightning possessed similar power, everyone would likely be in great danger. The Empire's ambition was not small, and their expedition's destination was within the Empire's territory. If I use Reinhard as a reference, I should be able to hold them off. Knight Fiona touched the sword at her waist. Apart from being a swordswoman, Knight Fiona also possessed the pride authority that Fiona had previously been able to use. An authority that perfectly suited Fiona's combat style, could greatly enhance her combat power in this regard. As long as the opponent could not quickly uncover her secrets, they would not be able to take down Knight Fiona in a short amount of time. Previously, when Fiona faced Reinhard had died many times because he did not understand Fiona's authority, until everyone saw through Fiona's authority and managed to defeat her. Rumble. Lightning illuminated the world. Ominous dark clouds appeared at the kingdom's border, carrying thunderstorms and mist that reeked of wither. That's the place, meow. Felix looked at the center of the thunderstorm. A disaster capable of making the nations of this continent launch a subjugation mission was certainly not something that could be easily crushed. Just looking at it from afar is enough to make one's heart palpitate. Crush also said. Chapter 145 The Storm from Nether. Pale lightning flashed high in the sky, and a huge figure appeared and disappeared in the clouds. Because of Fiona's influence on the plot, Emilia, who was looking for Subaru and the others, also arrived in Geralt City ahead of schedule. It's unbelievable, but what's above the clouds really does look a lot like Warcraft. Ram used his clairvoyance to observe the situation in the sky. Because the monster was so large, Ram couldn't even get a full view of it in a short time. The mere existence of this monster has already caused such a commotion. By the way, how did this magical beast even appear here? Emilia looked at the giant beast in the distance with some surprise. Since Subaru and Rem were not around, Emilia and the others' primary task was to reunite with Subaru. The Wallachia Empire has sent out 3 scouts, but all have failed to return. Under the almost constant wither effect, no creature can survive, not to mention the extremely dense black fog inside the storm. I don't know, I just hope Subaru isn't in a place like that. Speaking of which, Lugnica should also send a team over, right? Many forces from other countries have begun to gather near the city-state, and the distance is too great for ordinary ranged weapons to harm the magical beasts high in the sky. Anyone who gets too close will be harmed by the monster. A riot has just broken out here, but the source of the riot seems to be far away. I heard that the rebels quickly took over the city, and even defeated the second 9 divine generals. Otto, who had gone to investigate, also returned. According to the intelligence he had gathered, Subaru was most likely a participant in the riot. Subaru should have already left this place. Subaru is one of them. This somewhat familiar record was immediately recognized by everyone. After all, Subaru had cleared high-difficulty dungeons more than once or twice. Can you determine the direction Subaru and the others are heading? Just as the group was speaking, the magic crystal cannons mounted on the city wall suddenly opened fire, targeting the wasteland beneath the storm. What's wrong? Otto said with some surprise. There are a lot of soldiers gathered in the city now. It's hard to imagine anyone coming to cause trouble at this time. Then came a continuous barrage of fire, and the crowd began to stir. As the situation escalated, Otto also made his own judgment. Lady Emilia, we need to leave this city first. Otto brought the dragon carriage. The Wallachia Empire was already at odds with the kingdom of Lugnica, and now Emilia and the others had no connection with the people here. Preserving one's own strength is the most important thing. Emilia and Ram had no objections, and the dragon carriage soon departed from the city-state. Is that a scout from the Wallachia Empire? The wolf emblem on the flag made it instantly recognizable as the insignia of the Wallachia Empire. In Otto's and the others' view, a Wallachia Imperial scout team was retreating towards Geralt. But what awaited them was the imminent firing of the magic crystal cannon. As the explosion rang out, the scout team was instantly thrown into disarray. Emilia was somewhat surprised and covered her mouth. Betty spoke up, noticing a black aura of death gathering above the scout team in her eyes, clearly indicating they were no longer alive. He got up. The scouts, severely wounded by the magic crystal cannon, were able to get up shakily, proving that they were no longer allies. A similar situation had occurred in Lugnica. They have likely been stripped of their lives and become part of the enemy under the storm. Without hesitation, the entire squad was completely wiped out by a few shells, with no possibility of recovery. At this moment, the wither storm was still dormant, and the undead creatures did not automatically launch an attack on the most populated area. This small number of undead could not possibly cause any impact, and they were all wiped out without even the intervention of high-level combatants. Crush and his group. Meanwhile, Subaru and the others had already headed to Chaos Frem, the city known as the Demon City. Emilia and the others followed Subaru's trail. Currently, most of Valachia's high-level combat forces are stationed around the border, making it a good time for Abel and the others to make their move. Subaru has also chosen to act alongside the group. Crush and his companions also successfully arrived in the city of Geralt after a long journey. Wow, so many people. Felix looked around in surprise. The city was now filled with soldiers from all over, while Lugnica and her group had arrived at their safe area. What's wrong, Crunch? Crunch, who had just arrived in the city-state, received a letter from Emilia and others, informing them of their general plans for the future. The letter was left by Emilia and the others. It seems that Subaru and the others will be here as well. Is that so? Then it's not like I'm fighting alone, meow. Upon learning that friendly forces were nearby, Felix breathed a sigh of relief. Since they were all Lugnica's forces, he wouldn't stand idly by and watch his own people be eroded by forces from other countries. It feels so familiar. According to intelligence from the Valachia Empire, storms have become increasingly frequent recently, and a real uprising may not be far off. Knight Fiona felt as if something was watching her from the shadows, and her body instinctively placed her hand on the scabbard. Finally, I can take a hot bath, meow. Felix was unaware of this. The area around the storm was filled with the aura of death, rendering most of his senses, except for his eyesight, almost useless. As we get closer to the storm, it may become difficult even to open our eyes. What do you think is the purpose of this giant beast? Crush asked the Knight Fiona beside him. The Valachia forces don't have any accurate information about the appearance of this behemoth. The behemoth's attitude towards the attack was extremely passive. It simply hovered quietly in the sky, rendering most attacks ineffective. Attract attention. Knight Fiona shared her thoughts. Such a massive creature, even its aura is impossible to ignore. It is waiting for an enemy powerful enough to make it act. Knight Fiona put it succinctly. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Novels Wonderland.